The most dangerous liars you'll ever meet sound exactly like people telling the truth. They make eye contact, they stay calm, they even seem more detailed than honest people. But their words, the actual structure of their sentences, follow patterns so consistent that trained interrogators can spot them in under 60 seconds. And you hear these patterns every single day without catching a single one. Start with distancing language. When someone is being truthful about their actions, they plant themselves in the story. I drove to the store. I bought the groceries. I came home. First person, past tense, direct. A liar instinctively creates distance between themselves and the event. They'll say the car was driven to the store, or the groceries got purchased. The subject vanishes. Passive voice floods in. They're linguistically removing themselves from scenes they don't want to be connected to. Pay attention to how people describe mundane tasks they actually did versus things they're fabricating. The real version sounds almost boring in its directness. The fabricated version sounds oddly formal, like a police report written by someone who wasn't there, because in their mind, they weren't. This distancing shows up in pronoun shifts too. Someone recounting a real argument might say, "I told her she was wrong." A liar describing the same event drifts toward, "You know how people get in those situations." Or, things were said, the I dissolves, "we" appears where it shouldn't. "Things happened" replaces, "I did this." Watch for the moment someone switches from first person to third person mid-story. That switch point is almost always where the lie begins, but pronouns are just the surface. The deeper pattern lives in something researchers call narrative balance, and it catches liars in a way they never expect. Honest accounts follow a predictable structure. Roughly 20 to 30% of the story covers what happened before the main event, about 50% covers the event itself, and the remaining 20 to 30% covers what happened after. Liars almost always butcher this ratio. They over-rehearse the main event, that's the part they've practiced, and the before and after sections collapse to almost nothing. Ask someone what happened before or after the key moment. If the story suddenly loses all its texture and detail, you're listening to a script with thin margins. Interrogators exploit this constantly. They'll ask someone to start their story from the end and work backward. Truthful people stumble a bit, but manage because they're pulling from actual memory. Liars fall apart. Their rehearsed sequence only runs in one direction, like a song you can sing but can't recite backward. The architecture crumbles under reordering. So distancing language flags deception. Narrative balance exposes rehearsal. The third pattern is stranger, and it hides in the smallest words. Truthful statements tend to be shorter, more direct. I was home all night. A liar adds qualifiers compulsively. I was home honestly the entire night. I swear you can ask anyone. The sentence bloats with convincing language that an honest person would never think to include. Researchers who analyzed thousands of deposition transcripts found that the frequency of phrases like "to be honest," "I swear," and "believe me" correlates with deception at rates that are hard to ignore. Think about that from the liar's perspective. They know the truth isn't backing them up, so they substitute social pressure for evidence. They're asking you to trust their character instead of their facts. An honest person doesn't need you to believe them. They have the truth doing that work. A liar has to sell. This is why honestly is such a loaded word. The moment someone inserts it into a sentence, they're implicitly acknowledging that dishonesty is on the table. Your brain processes it as a flag, even if consciously you let it slide. Count how many times someone says honestly or truthfully in a single conversation. Once is natural, 3 or more times, and the pattern is doing something the words themselves deny. The fourth pattern is the one that catches the most sophisticated liars, the ones who've trained themselves out of the obvious tells. When people lie, they tend to avoid contractions. I did not do that, instead of I didn't do that. I was not there, instead of I wasn't there. This is subtle enough that most people miss it entirely. But the psychological mechanism is revealing. Liars unconsciously emphasize the denial. They stretch the sentence to make the not louder, more forceful. Truthful people don't feel the need to emphasize their denial because, to them, the truth is just obvious. They use contractions naturally, the same way they would in any other sentence. Bill Clinton's famous "I did not have sexual relations with that woman" follows this pattern precisely. The full "did not" instead of "didn't," the formal, deliberate phrasing. The distancing pronoun, that woman, instead of using her name. 3 deception markers in a single sentence broadcast to millions of people who felt something was off but couldn't articulate why. Formal speech during informal conversation is a flare. When someone shifts from casual language to suddenly precise, almost legal phrasing, their brain has switched modes. They've moved from recalling to constructing. Memory is messy and uses shortcuts. Fabrication is careful and avoids them. The 5th pattern ties all the others together, and it's the one liars are least aware of. Truthful people include what researchers call self-deprecating details, small admissions that make themselves look slightly bad. Yeah, I was 20 minutes late because I forgot my keys, which was stupid. A liar sanitizes their story. Every detail serves the narrative. Nothing is included that doesn't advance their version of events. The story is too clean. Real memories include the parts where you looked foolish, forgot something obvious, or made a choice you wouldn't brag about. When someone tells you a story and they come out looking perfectly reasonable at every turn, with no awkward moments, no minor failures, no details that serve no purpose, you're hearing an edited version. The rough edges have been sanded off because the whole thing was built from scratch. Interrogators call these unnecessary details, and they actively look for their absence. A truthful witness describing a robbery might mention that they were eating a sandwich when it happened, or that the song on the radio was annoying. These details serve zero narrative purpose. They're in the story because they were in the memory. A liar strips these out because their cognitive load is already maxed out maintaining the fabricated storyline. Adding irrelevant texture costs brainpower they can't spare. So when you're listening to someone and the story feels strangely efficient, every detail advancing the plot, nothing wasted, nothing embarrassing, that efficiency is the tell. Real stories meander. Real stories have dead ends and irrelevant tangents. A perfectly streamlined account is a constructed one. Now, one critical caveat. Every person on Earth occasionally uses distancing language, drops contractions, or forgets to mention embarrassing details. A single pattern in isolation means almost nothing. Deception shows up in clusters. When 3 or 4 of these patterns stack on top of each other in the same conversation, the probability shifts dramatically. You're looking for convergence, the moment when distancing language meets sanitized stories, meets qualifier flooding, meets formal phrasing. All at once, all pointed at the same claim. The people who are hardest to read are the ones who lie rarely. Frequent liars develop habits you can clock. Rare liars are dangerous because they don't have patterns yet. They just have one story, one time, and the full weight of their cognitive resources devoted to making it land. You've been in a conversation where something felt wrong and you couldn't explain it. Your ears were catching these patterns before your conscious mind had a framework for them. Now, you have the framework. The words were always telling you the truth, even when the person speaking them was doing the opposite.